Alright, you ignorant pigs, put down your crack pipes and your beer bongs. It's time for HD's Night at the Movies. This night's offering from Beyond the Pit is Madman 1982, directed by Joe Giannone. Say that 3 times fast. Joe Giannone, Joe Giannone, Joe Giannone. That's a really hard one. Written by Gary Sales, starring Gaylen, Ann Ross, and Paul Ehlers. Madman would be one of those films to come out in the wake of the very first Friday the 13th, which is a simple slasher film done for $500,000 that would go on to gross $60 million. So apparently that's where the money was in the early 80s. Let's check it out. So Madman would be a movie to borrow little elements of The Corpsey Legend, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and Friday the 13th. They put it together in a script, and you can't mention this movie without first talking about the Corpsey Killer. Now, of course, I had to do a lot of notes for this movie, and when I got finished, I was like 5 pages on college-bound notebook paper, and I'm like, well, I can't do a review on this. I'll just be sitting here reading out of the goddamn notebook. So we've all heard the story about a hook-handed killer in a raincoat. That's the Corpsey Legend. Or it's an axe-wielding killer in a raincoat. Both of them would be used in their own movies. The one movie would be Urban Legend, and the other one being I Know What You Did Last Summer. Both of them use a dark, mysterious figure in the night as the killer. That's the Corpsey. That's kind of the Corpsey legend. The real Corpsey would drag children from the safety of their homes to an abandoned mental asylum, kill the children, and then bury them in the dirt and shallow graves of the grounds of that asylum. We've all heard about the hook-handed guy story in the 80s and 90s about the guy who interrupts a young couple's makeout session. That would, of course, be in Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. That would be one of their bigger ones, along with Baba Yaga and the Wendigo, all of those old stories. If you want to keep exploring this rabbit hole of the hook-handed killer, Candyman had a hook for a hand. J.M. Barrie's character, Captain Hook, also had a hook for a hand. And they were both menacing presences. So that's kind of where this story would come from. Madman Max is a menacing presence. And it's kind of cool the way they frame him up in this movie. He's kind of like part man, part Sasquatch, part retard. You can't tell which is which because the way they shoot him, you don't see all of him. You see glimpses of him until the very end. And that's something that I really, really like about horror movies that do that. You don't see the monster until the very end. Like The Fly. You don't see it until the very end, and then it becomes a problem. Of course, during this time on Staten Island, which is where the movie was filmed, you also had the Andre Rand trials going through, and Andre Rand was taking kids to the Seaview Asylum. Now, they don't know if he murdered anyone, but they did charge him with murder. They also put him in on a life count for rape and kidnapping, and he's doing 3 life sentences for the 3, but they never proved the murder. But he was basically given the nickname Corpsey, even though he had both hands. And that's kind of where the genesis of Madman would come from. So Madman is also one of those summer camp slashers, if you couldn't already tell, because I've already been talking about Friday the 13th. And instead of being a summer camp for kids, it's a fall camp for the incredibly gifted. As a matter of fact, these kids are so gifted. You have to have one counselor for each kid, because I think I only count about 7 campers and 8 counselors if I include the owner Max, and hell, I'll even throw in the cook Dippy. And so Gaylen Ross's character Betsy is our lead girl. The movie starts off with the campers telling the story of Madman Marz around a campfire, very similar to Friday the 13th 2, where they talk about the real scoop on Jason. They never found him and everything. And the story is loosely, for no good reason, Madman Marz killed his family with an axe and a noose. And then he went down to the bar to celebrate with a beer. I see nothing wrong with that. You know, that's what you get for a job well done. Man kills his family, celebrates with a cold one. They then in turn lynch the guy, and then when they come back to get the body the next day after they hit him in the head with an axe and lynched him, his body was nowhere to be found. Pretty spooky stuff. So after the story, after the camp fire stories are done for the night, everybody walks back to camp except for one camper named Richie, and he goes and investigates the Madman house. Of course, it's taking place right next to the Madman Marz house. That's where the camp just so happens to be. You have a little bit of weak writing in this. During this time, you're introduced to our 2 baby boomer protagonists, Tony Fish, aka TP, and Betsy. They're the 2 main camp counselors. TP, aka douchebag, with his boomer apology.
I'd like to get into something a bit more personal. Tonight, you all witnessed a scene between Betsy and me, up at the campfire, that should have never happened. I'd like to publicly apologize to Betsy and to the rest of you for subjecting you to my petty and selfish attitude.
And that somehow that apology gets him sexy time. And these 2 disgusting boomers have sex in this hot tub.
Please let your feelings through. Love don't need words to know how I feel about you. Don't need words.
This is the most rancid thing I've ever seen in my entire life. Is this the genesis of the millennial generation? Let's see, it's 1981. You have 2 boomers clearly on coke about to do it in a hot tub. Now, for some reason, I know that boomers love their hot tubs. They love their jacuzzis. They love hot tubs and jacuzzis upstairs in their bedroom, so much so they don't care how much the power bill is for said hot tubs. You know, you got the micro hot tub. They also got the hot tub for their feet. But I have a feeling a lot of my generation would be conceived in these rancid cesspits they call hot tubs. I hate hot tubs. The only time I ever get into a hot tub is after a hard day of work one day. I took off my work boots in full view of a bunch of other people at the gym. Like, I came in, took off my work boots, sat down, rolled up my pant legs, and put my feet in the water. And everybody looked at me like I was disgusting. But let me tell you something. I didn't go underneath the water. Everybody's balls, pussy, and butthole was underneath that water, and you just put your head under there. All I did was get my feet wet, and you're looking at me like I'm some kind of animal, barbarian, savage, or renegade. Okay, so needless to say, that's the genesis of how millennials came. That's how if you're a millennial and you have an older sibling that was born in the early mid-80s, this is 80, 82, 83, 84, And I'll throw 85 in there. If they were born, they were probably conceived by two coked up boomers having sex in a hot tub. I'd hate to have to tell you that. It was ratchet. Ugh. No. Nobody needed to see that. After the douchebag in the hot tub love scene, they realize, oh, one of the gifted kids is missing. So TP, the douchebag, it goes out to look for Richie. All right, I just bear with me here, okay? I just can't get over this guy and his douchebaggery. All right. And thank God, justice is served when you see that boomer hanging at the end of a 10-foot rope.
Smells like death.
And I gotta ask the question, who has a monogrammed belt buckle?
Oh, just why the flowers grow, that's okay too.
No, seriously, is that even a thing? And then this guy, he is like Boomer 2.0, or like he's got, or like people who have gone ultra MAGA, they have the ultra MAGA flag. But this guy, you know, I understand it's cool to be MAGA if that's your thing, but the ultra MAGA flag or the TP monogrammed fucking belt buckle, really? Talk about douching out with maximum douche. All right. So after serious consideration, I about turned the movie off there, but I kept going. Shortly after that, Boomer number 2, this is the assistant manager of the camp, goes to look for Richie and TP, who was the assistant manager of the camp counselors, if that's even a thing. I guess it is if you're paying a lot of money to send your kids to a camp for the incredibly gifted. And Boomer number 2 gets the axe, by the way. So this is where the plot kind of shows its weakness in terms of writing, but not in terms of carnage. We notice that 2 boomers and a child are missing, so what are we going to do? We're going to go send 2 more another boomer, or let's just say groups of 1 to 2 boomers go out to look for the missing, and they don't return. So during this whole time, Richie finds out not only is Madman Marz real, he gets to see what happened to boomers 1 through 4, which I'm all for, all right? And then every time, as everyone's being picked off, Betsy, the main girl, finally finds evidence of a murder and decides to call the boss, or owner of the camp, Max. She loads up the shotgun and then accidentally kills her friend in typical boomer fashion. But that's the way Ellie should have died when she got the axe to the chest. However, friendly fire in a horror movie, like that's something that's never addressed in a zombie movie. I don't know if I've seen it happen. I think it might have happened in The Walking Dead, but that's not a zombie movie. But friendly fire in a horror movie, a very likely scenario, because Ellie knocks on the door and she accidentally gets blasted by Betsy, who's scared out of her mind at this point because nobody's come back. All the other boomers have been dragged away by Madman Marz, and then she accidentally killed her friend. She gathers up all the campers, they get on a bus, and then there's the madman. They have to fight him off. They drive a mile down the road, and she decides she's going to go and confront the madman. All right? There's a boy on the bus who's old enough to drive. He drives the bus into town while she goes into this last confrontation. And she's overpowered and killed by the madman, which is absolutely the most likely scenario. it breaks the only girl, the final girl special rule. The final girl is supposed to be virginal, which if you're a boomer, there's nothing virginal about you. Like, I could do a whole video on how Giannone of Forrest Gump is like the epitome of boomer piece of shit dumb. She is like the worst human being in the world. She literally is. Like, oh, after I get dicked down by all these Black Panther leaders, I'm going to New York, or I'm going to do coke and get dicked down some more, and then afterwards I'm going to give you an AIDS baby, Forrest. Oh, God, I'm so great. I'm a boomer. There you go. But I could do a whole series of videos on that. And it would be... It would probably take 26 videos to describe just how shitty some of these boomers were. Anyway, this realistic ending is really, really intensified when she's just overpowered and dragged to the basement. Now, I kind of knew she was going to die when she got that big gash across her face and you could see her cheekbone. And I got to give props to the makeup guy on there. I think some of the makeup and effects were done by the lead monster himself. And I just want to, I think it is Paul Ehlers, who was also an illustrator, who did the sign for the movie. So she's just dragged away and then put up on a meat hook. And so that's kind of where the movie ends. And they cut to they cut to a scene of all the victims hanging there on hooks, which is both a nod to the Corpsey Killers of Staten Island and Texas Chainsaw. They cut back to a picture to Richie sitting there on the road, all strung out, scared out of his mind. Max finds him, and the movie ends with Madman Marz. He's real.
You all right? Richie! Man... Marz. He's real.
And so without further ado, let's get to some of those Slayer Pit totals. We have 8 dead boomers, 1 naked chick. Meh, I don't think she's really that attractive, but at least she's thin. I mean, at least being thin will get you, being thin in a 6 will get you some OnlyFans money, you know, that $45 you might make, which is the average account earnings, are about $45 a month. I think I'm doing a little better than that on Patreon. Thank you to the patrons. We have an axe to the chest, multiple dragon drops, meat hook sodomy. And then we have 1 decapitation by car hood, shotgun foo, a ratchet sex scene in a hot tub.
Head out with you. Please let your feelings through. Love don't need words to know how I feel about you. Don't need words.
Ooh. And finally, Slayer Pit award nominations for Paul Ehlers for portraying the Madman Marz, Joe Giannone and Gary Sales for bringing into life one hell of a cult film. HD gives it 2 skulls. 3 skulls. I'm gonna go with 3 skulls on this. It's definitely worth the $3 that I paid on Amazon just to buy it. I will say it is worth $3. This is one of those perfect bargain bin movies that you will not be disappointed in for the month of Halloween. Let's see what Raphael, our resident guest for the month of October, had to say.
Where did they come up with this stuff?
He clearly didn't like it. As you know, YouTube has many features you can use to interact with me. You can like the video, dislike the video, comment, or subscribe. But until I see you again, I'm tied between Prisoner 701 and Intruder. What did you think about Madman? What do you think about the 2 potential next movies for the rest of the month of October? Till I see you again, stay metal, my friends, and keep watching horror movies.
more of an expert at exposing the moon. Get out here, let's go! See if you find the one crater.